3 Lives 3 Worlds. The Pillow Book. Lower volume. Original work by Tangqi Gongzi. English translation, Hamster 428. English editing, Rockharlequin, Lily, JoannaKuang. Part 4 The Shadow's Souls. Chapter 10. With the injury on her hand getting better, Fengju could start to move pots and pans that day. In her estimation, Zai Shenjun should already have returned to Qinan Palace. At Shuiyu Swamp, she once bragged to Zais that she was best at making toffee. Back in Qingqiu, the one thing she was proudest of was her culinary skills. Too bad she hadn't been able to show off due to her injured hand. Not using her hand for another day would have been unbearable. The moment the doctor removed her bandage, she rushed to the kitchen like a whirlwind. But what should she shape these toffees into? Anyone in this world who knew anything about anything would choose a fox as their favorite animal. In her heart of hearts, she assumed Zeiss to be a knowledgeable person. At the same time, she was completely confident of her original fox form. For this reason, she made a fox-shaped mold according to her original looks. She waited for the sugar to caramelize, then poured the syrup into the mold as she hummed a little song. After it cooled, it became a fun little toffee fox. Each toffee fox was put on a thin stick to eat easily. She made 10 foxes, wrapped them up neatly, then attached them to the letter she wrote a few days ago asking Zeiss to help her in her sham. She charged Cha Cha to promptly bring them to Qinan Palace and hand them directly to Zeiss. Compared to the toffee, the letter is a bit more important. If you encountered any trouble, you may abandon the toffee to protect the letter. She watched the look in Cha Cha's eyes. It was slightly doubtful, then a little startled. There was some comfort, but also a trace of joy. She heard the little attendant who went with Cha Cha open his mouth to ask confusedly, "Why is the letter a little more important?" Cha Cha had reached the arching doorway when she lowered her voice to reply. Fengju could not catch what she said. It seemed to have been, "This is the first time Her Highness wrote this kind of letter to His Lordship. Of course the letter is more important." Fengju scratched her head and returned to plop down onto her bed. This kind of letter? What kind of letter was this kind of letter? She was only a small palace servant, yet she had more experience than her, even knowing what kind of letter it was. But exactly what kind of letter was it anyway? Su Moi came at the hour of the rooster, 5 to 7 p.m. He seemed hurried as he told her Zeiss had called him for an urgent matter and he needed to make a trip to Qinan Palace. He could guess she hadn't started on Aranya's letters to Chen yet, so in the past few days, he already wrote all of them for her. All she had to do was send one every few days to Mengchun Manor. Fengju truly hadn't started on any of the letters. She secretly sighed that Mo Xiao was really her kindred spirit. However, she found it a little strange and wondered how Zeiss was able to call him out when, outside of this valley, Su Moi was a master to whom even Shang Jun must give some regard. But the joy at seeing these letters temporarily dispelled her doubts. In her childhood, her most loathed thing was Buddhism class. Next was writing assignments from her teacher. Since he was so noble this time, Mo Xiao made himself incomparably wonderful in her heart. She almost bounced the entire way in escorting him out of the princess estate. Taking advantage of the rising moon on the willow tree, Fengju asked her steward to deliver the first letter to Mengchun Manor. During dinner, she drank a bowl of porridge and had half a cake. As she was about to rest, a young attendant stumbled into her home. He sobbed as he said big trouble was going on in Mengchun Manor. Fengju started in surprise. What big trouble could it be to make such a clever child so scared? The attendant rubbed the swelling on his forehead and cried breathlessly. How could there be bullying in her estate? Whoever committed this crime was giving her absolutely no face. Fengju held the attendant's hand and knitted her brow in outrage. Let's go, Jija will back you up. Inside Mengchun Manor, most had gathered in Chen Yi's room. A chaotic war zone indeed seemed to be inside from the shadows she saw on the window. Fengju contemplated. Would it be better to be severe with reason, or to be gentle with affection for this instance of servant discipline? Most of her ire had gone away on the way here, and after thinking a while, she felt she should be a little gentler. She had only stepped into the door with a gentle face on display when a porcelain cup flew to her face and hit her forehead. It landed on the ground and sent the roomful of people into shock. Her old housekeeper immediately dropped his head to the ground and asked for forgiveness as he wiped the perspiration on his forehead. I didn't know your highness was coming. Your humble servant. Fengju calmly wiped the soup on her face using her sleeve and cut him short. What's going on? Having gone through training, the servants agilely but soundlessly came to her, some handing her towels, some sweeping the shatters. The old housekeeper trembled as he answered, His Excellency Chen Ye had a bit to drink tonight. I couldn't leave to report to you and was afraid you'd be worried if you didn't hear from me. So I told the attendant to send you words. I did not think it would alarm you. How unforgivable of me. Fengju only saw Chen Ye lying in bed now. Several servants surrounded the bed. One sat on the ground and seemed to have been there before she came in, one was cleaning the broken pieces on the floor, one brought a new bowl of concoction for Chen Ye. It turned out Chen Ye was drunk. And drunkenness was as trivial as sesame seeds. If she were Fengju at this time, she'd definitely throw him a towel and leave. But she was now Aranya. Aranya was in love with Chen Ye. One frown of his would cause worry and make her concernedly write him a letter to cheer him up and erase his frown. His drunkenness right now was undoubtedly a big deal. The housekeeper attentively observed her expression and tentatively said, Since His Excellency Chen Ye is drunk, his mood isn't very stable. Your Highness, if you remain here, you're certain to be hurt or troubled. It's good enough to have me waiting on him inside. Perhaps you should retire to your chamber to rest. Fengju carefully assessed the situation before her eyes. If she were Aranya, she'd be beside herself with worry. Thinking so, she immediately raised her worried voice and replied, How can I do that? I came here to visit him, but he's so drunk right now, how can I be at ease if I didn't stay to look after him? These words had barely left her mouth when, without waiting for others to react, she was the first to feel tightness in her chest and quickly gave it a rub. Her steward seemed to understand after listening to what she said. He rose and helped her to a chair nearby, then assured her, Even though His Excellency is drunk, he is very still. It's just that he wouldn't let us feed him hangover soup. Because we tried to come near, porcelain wares were all smashed on the spot. I wonder how many have been broken by now. Between his words, crash, another porcelain bowl was shattered. Two maids and a servant squatted in front of Chen Yi's bed, a well-trained one devoted herself to cleaning up the pieces, the other well-trained one handed him another concoction bowl, and the physically strong servant went to stop Chen Ye from overturning it again. At this time, because Aranya had personally favored and spoiled Chen Ye, Fengju suddenly said, "If he wants to smash it, let him smash it. What are you stopping him for?" The servant immediately withdrew his hands. On the housekeeper's face was both grief and woe. "Your Highness may not know, the porcelain wares His Excellency destroyed were all of premium grade given by the royal palace. The bowl that was just smashed was worth at least 10 night pearls." Fengju's heart suddenly bled, but because she needed to show that she favored Chen Ye, she lied through her teeth. "Haha, no wonder the shattering sounded so delightful." The steward stared at her. He seemed to have developed a greater comprehension. A maid who specialized in dressing wounds dressed Fengju's bruise with a towel. Suddenly, Chen Ye, who was lying in bed, opened his mouth to say, "Tell them to all go away." Fengju squinted her eyes. "Does that mean he's awake?" The maids and servants all turned to look at her. Under these stares, Fengju expertly threw the towel onto the floor and hastened to his bed. "Full of nonsense," she asked concernedly, "do you feel any better?" The old steward dismissed the servants to the outer hall, then personally guarded outside around the corner in case Fengju had any command for him. Chen Ye opened his eyes to look at her. This was the first time Fengju saw that one could actually be inebriated into drunken paleness. He sounded sober when he spoke, but his eyes were full of vague haziness. Fengju reckoned he was really drunk. Chen Ye looked at her for quite some time, then finally spoke, "I knew this place wasn't going to be exactly the same as in the past, and that many things would change. But as long as her body was here, it didn't matter how much they changed. It's best to change everything, in fact, so that I won't." Without finishing his sentence, he seemed to be strongly suppressing a certain something. There was great suffering in his voice, but a shell is nothing but a shell. How could a shell have written this letter? No, it's also best not to have this letter, it's best. He took her hand, then let it go as if he was out of strength. "You should not be her. You cannot be her. You are not her," he said again a while later. Fengju was startled as she asked back in a low voice, "Who are you saying I should not be?" Chen Ye gazed to the bed canopy but did not answer her question. His countenance was terribly handsome, terribly cold, and terribly bewildered. "I once told her," he hoarsely began, "that with the many possibilities between us, strangers, enemies, arch-nemeses, and others, was there not any possibility for mutual appreciation?" She then laughed. Tell me, what could she mean by laughing? Fengju was wordless for quite a while. "Perhaps she thought your words were kind of cool." Chen Ye ignored her remark. Instead, he looked at her fixedly. In his bewildered eyes appeared a restrained pain. At length, he smiled, "You said you could be teasing me, or you could actually like me, but the latter was really what you had in mind, am I right?" In his heart was an occasional trace of joy, as if within silent despair suddenly bloomed a white manjusaka. Fengju finally understood why Aranya fell for Chen Ye. His Excellency the Archmage had really good looks. For a moment she was silent, not knowing how to answer him. Then at length she said, okay." Chen Ye obviously didn't know what she was talking about. she didn't even know herself. She just now remembered Sumoy's old stories, her heart thumping, her brain a mess. When she saw Chen Ye pausing for a bit then looking as if he was going to say something else, she felt a little annoyed and knocked him unconscious. Silence all around. She was about to process the reason behind her thoughts when she inadvertently looked up and saw her old steward huddling by the door looking back at her in shock. Feng Zhu suddenly realized that she had delivered the blow too abruptly. When she saw Chen Ye lying unconscious in bed, she drew a breath and quickly went for damage control. He wouldn't drink the hangover soup and would not lie still. Wouldn't that be more uncomfortable for him? Knocking him was a last resort, but it did lead to a good outcome. Alas, the wound is his, but the pain is mine. As I look at him this very second, my heart is throbbing with pain. The old steward's look of shock sure enough became one of concern and sympathy. He tentatively tried to comfort her, "Your Highness." Feng Zhu clutched her bosom and interrupted him, "The pain sometimes trickles in, it sometimes comes in tearing fits. At this moment, it's like one of a prickly needle piercing through my heart inch by inch. Ah, it hurts so much. I shall go back first and wait for this pain to alleviate. Please take care of the rest for me, everyone." She clutched her chest as she spoke, then retreated to the door. Between the old steward's brows revealed a deeply touched feeling. He at once said with loyalty, "Your humble servant will serve His Excellency to the best of my ability in order to share your Highness's burden." Once at the door, Feng Zhu exhaled in relief and raised her hand to wipe the perspiration on her forehead. Acting also required techniques. Luckily she did not lose her composure in this situation thanks to her past experience. One day when Sumoy had a bit more to drink than usual, he sighed to her a line or two and reconciled that this thing was really a puzzling mystery. How could there be such a thing as two unrelated people linking together in a way that if she was happy you'd be happy, if she was sad you'd be sad? At this point, Feng Zhu's heart was overwhelmed with emotions. What was so difficult to understand about this? She and Chen Ye, for instance, had come to this. No matter what, they'd always have a little connection. If he was happy he wouldn't come to annoy her, and she'd also be very happy. But if he was sad he would come to torture her, then she would also be very sad. She let out a sigh, then looked back at Chen Yi's clamoring room. Recalling her recent cheesy words to her housekeeper, she shuddered and made an expeditious escape. Now lying in her room, Feng Zhu turned a small teacup in her palm. Whenever she contemplated something, she always had a habit of turning things in her palm. She knew Sumoy had his suspicion about this world's creator, but the two of them had never seen exposed traces left by anyone until tonight's drunken display by Chen Ye. This stuff called alcohol was really no good. If it was truly Chen Ye who created this world, he must have created it just to be with Aranya again. But if that was the case, why had he been so indifferent to her ever since she came here? This part made little sense to her. He even said weird things tonight such as she shouldn't be Aranya, or that she was only a shell and the like. Mo Xiao once said the creator of this world wasn't that powerful. Anyone who fell into this place would replace the original, but by logic, only those people themselves would know. Even the creator shouldn't have this knowledge. In other words, Chen Ye couldn't possibly know that she was in fact by Feng Zhu instead of Aranya. Yet he kept insisting she was only a shell. Or perhaps, since he created another Aranya but could not fool himself that she was real, he thus said she was only a shell. The lamp fire made a crackling sound. A trace of foggy memory suddenly flashed in her mind. That night after Chen Ye rescued her from the Juque cage, she had heard these words in a trance. Even though she couldn't remember much, they left a bit of impression. I will resurrect you. I will bring you back. At this moment, she thought perhaps it did sound a little like Chen Ye. As Fengju thought through this, she became aware of a headache forming. Moreover, one shouldn't think too much at night else sleep wouldn't easily come. She laid the cup down and decided to revisit the matter once she woke up. She slept till dawn. Her old steward was waiting outside when she awoke. He gave her a revitalizing cup of soup as he told her Lord Chen Ye had sobered up and was quite moved when he heard the princess had visited him in person last night. Supposing the princess must have been disturbed, he ordered the cook to make this soup and asked him to bring it to her. He could see Lord Chen Ye was actually quite caring toward the princess. As the old steward said these words, his eyes gleamed with happy tears. While he was shedding tears, Fengju drank from the cup of soup and thought it was indeed pretty refreshing. She ate half another bowl of porridge for breakfast, then after cleaning up, felt there might be some serious matters she needed to ponder on today. These matters seemed to have something to do with Chen Ye last night. She spent half a day to think but could not recall what Chen Ye said, nor could she remember what she wanted to think about. After some silence, she thought that since she didn't remember, it probably either didn't matter or she was confused and remembered wrongly, and did not care to think about it anymore. Su Moi was called away by Zeiss. Cha Cha was sent to deliver toffee foxes to Zeiss. And Zeiss? She bet Zeiss was also sitting around at the palace right now. Maybe the three of them were gathering around a small table to enjoy toffee and tea, having fun and game. Fengju felt a bit bleak, and a bit lonely at the same time. She passed a bleak and lonely day this way in the kitchen to make more toffee foxes. She made 2 for herself and 2 for each of her servants, saved 5 for Su Moi, and still had 5 left over. After thinking a little, she remembered Chen Ye had sent soup to her in the morning and would need to be reciprocated. Being someone who understood the courtesy of reciprocation, she packed the rest of the toffee foxes into a bag, then bade her steward to take the package along with the second letter over to Chen Ye. End of chapter 10.